What is up, guys? Thank you for tuning back in. Hope this video finds you doing well, because on the gaming streets, things are not doing well at all. I mean, everybody is losing their damn mind with the fallout of the ABK deal, especially PlayStation fans, when they have just now realized that Jim Ryan and the PlayStation brand have made some serious mistakes during the proceedings, and it has cost the fans dearly, and there's a lot of upset and outrage over it. And this has also led to PlayStation fans making some absolutely wild demands when it comes to other brands that Microsoft has acquired. And we are going to talk about it all right now, so buckle up, grab some popcorn, and let's blow some smoke. So I wanted to do this video sooner, but let's be honest, guys, I'm like you. I'm out here living the dream, working way too much for way too long for way too little, with no time to really do much other else. And well, hey, here we are now talking about it. So let's get right into it. This whole situation with PlayStation versus Xbox. This is like on a playground with like children, where you literally see that one kid that is constantly getting bullied, picked on, shoved down in the sandbox, and then that kid all of a sudden decides to like go hit the gym, bulk up, and by the time you get to middle school, he's an absolute monster with a reckoning for the person that screwed with him all those years on the playground. And that could kind of be said about Xbox. At this point in time, they are totally sick and tired of being screwed around with by PlayStation. And that is where they have really taken a very big stance when it comes to kind of putting PlayStation in their place. So Microsoft is going to inevitably end up owning Activision, let's just face it. And this is absolutely a result of the fact that PlayStation over the years has conducted themselves very aggressively, and Microsoft themselves has even said that PlayStation is a hostile competitor. And so Microsoft had to do something to be able to rival PlayStation in the market dominance that they created for themselves. And that is involved in purchasing companies like Activision and Bethesda. Now with Bethesda, they also purchased them because they found out that PlayStation was not only already engaging in third-party exclusivity deals trying to keep content off the Xbox platform, but they were going to flat out try to make Starfield an exclusive title, and Microsoft had to do something. So Microsoft literally bought the whole kit and caboodle and ended up owning Bethesda. And now we have Activision, where we saw Jim Ryan during the proceedings of the whole Activision deal, where he literally stomped his foot like a petulant child, saying, I don't want no like agreement or contract or anything from you guys. I just want to block your deal. We all remember that. And to be honest, he thought he was really going to end up winning in the end by somehow showing Microsoft that he could get the upper hand and cause world regulators to not approve the deal. And that completely backfired. So we already know that Microsoft in the beginning, Phil Spencer, offered Jim Ryan a 10-year agreement to have multiple Activision/Blizzard titles on the PlayStation brand. I mean, there was a whole breadth of titles and content that they wanted to give PlayStation access to in their original agreement. And we all know what Jim Ryan did. Again, he wanted to try to block the deal. That was his own choice. And he lost his focus in the fact that he really should have been looking out for gamers rather than looking out for his bottom line. And that's where he really screwed up, because now world regulators have approved the deal. And at this point, he knows he's screwed, so he had to make an agreement with Microsoft for that 10-year deal. And we saw Phil Spencer come out on Twitter announcing that they had officially signed an agreement with PlayStation for a 10-year commitment. But this time, that commitment was only for Call of Duty. Like, there was no mention of other titles. And that is where a lot of PlayStation fans have now become concerned, because what does this mean for the future of the PlayStation brand when it comes to certain Activision titles? And a lot of people are upset. So it got quite silly that literally world regulators and PlayStation, Jim Ryan, became too hyper-focused on Call of Duty and somehow shaping it into this title that literally is the glue that holds the gaming industry together, which is quite ridiculous and foolish. But because they chose to go down that road, everything about the deal became about Call of Duty. So that means it was all about the revenue that Call of Duty not only creates for PlayStation, but also for Xbox. Now, Xbox isn't going to throw that revenue in the trash. Like, they know that, like, there's about over 1 million players that play Call of Duty, like, consistently, like, heavily on the PlayStation brand. So therefore, they don't want to just, like, throw that in the trash. But for PlayStation, it was more about that revenue that they get from Call of Duty than thinking about the long-term effects of perhaps maybe having access to other titles that maybe the players on their ecosystem would like to have, like the Crash Bandicoots, the Spyros, the Tony Hawks. I mean, we could go on all day, but none of those titles were there if you really think about it. And that's what's really got a lot of fans irked, is that they are now in this state of limbo. Is it going to turn into another Bethesda, where the titles that fans want are not going to appear on that ecosystem because of PlayStation not only failing to negotiate for Activision titles, but there was like one journalist, we're about to get to it, that somehow had this idea, and I've also seen it on social media, that somehow PlayStation was supposed to force Xbox to put Bethesda titles back on PlayStation because they want access to the Starfields and the Elder Scrolls and all these titles, when literally we're talking about a brand and a fan base that has been literally rubbing it in everybody's face over about exclusivity this, exclusivity that. They have been riding the exclusivity hype train for years, and now they want to live in some hypocrisy that somehow now exclusives are bad because they don't have them. It's getting quite ridiculous. So the article that I'm talking about is over on gamingbible.com, and the link is down in the description, and he's covering the community's reaction to Activision becoming part of Microsoft. And somehow, like, fans are very upset that a lot of titles were left out of this agreement. The agreement was only for Call of Duty. And now there's a lot of fans that are very upset about this because they could care less about Call of Duty. They want the titles like the Crashes, the Spyros, the Overwatches, the Diablos, the Tony Hawks. They're all upset. But then it also goes into that these fans are also concerned that there was no mention of Bethesda in the deal. Like, so somehow, like, because Microsoft acquired Activision, the fans now feel this is going too far, and that Microsoft has to break off with Bethesda titles and give them access to other titles like the Fallouts and the future Dooms, the future Fallouts, the future Elder Scrolls games, Starfield. It's getting absolutely asinine. We've even seen a petition made like earlier this year for Starfield to come over to the PlayStation brand and for it to actually be a PlayStation exclusive. It's getting absolutely ridiculous that the PlayStation fan base is able to make these demands for access to titles when they are literally the champions of exclusivity. And honestly, they are also the ones that coined the phrase that Xbox has no games, when that could be further from the truth. I've never had a problem ever finding a game to play on my Xbox. And now all of a sudden, when Xbox has games that you want to play, you're getting up in arms because you can't play them on your PlayStation. It's just like the rules for thee are not for me. Really? Like, I mean, it's a complete hypocrisy at this point. And this is where I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. Like, we can all see that Jim Ryan made a massive mistake, and he should have gone along with the deal in the first place, and maybe the PlayStation fans would have gotten more titles than they would. Like, I mean, literally, we don't know what the future has in store for the PlayStation brand when it comes to Activision titles. But inevitably, whatever comes over on the PlayStation, the odds of it showing up in PlayStation Plus are quite low. Anything Activision based is going to show up in Game Pass, so it's going to become more affordable to play these titles on Xbox no matter what. And also, this Activision deal does not mean anything for the Bethesda deal. Let that go. Do you see us over here making petitions for like Spider-Man to be on Xbox? Like, let's really think about that. Spider-Man is not a PlayStation creation. It was created by Stan Lee and a company called Marvel. They had nothing to do with its creation and nothing to do with its success. Yes, they made it into a bigger success with having Insomniac Games kind of create one of the best Spider-Man experiences over on the PlayStation brand, but you have not seen anybody over here trying to like march down the gaming streets and creating petitions for that to become, for it to come to the Xbox brand. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. So let it go. Accept the fact that Microsoft now has titles that you want, and maybe it's time that you just got to buck up and get an Xbox. At the end of the day, we need serious competition in the gaming industry to keep things fresh and innovative, and also to kind of keep prices competitive for us consumers. And that's where it's good to see Xbox is going toe-to-toe with PlayStation to create that competition. But it was also inevitable for Xbox to eventually fight back to PlayStation, because PlayStation for too many years has been shoving Xbox's face in the sandbox, and it was only a certain amount of time before Xbox was going to get back up swinging. It's just a natural human reaction to defend yourself. And so can you blame Xbox for doing what they had to do to combat PlayStation and the tactics that they were using? So I don't fault Xbox at all for doing this. And that's where I say this just leads into the idea that you shouldn't dedicate yourself to one brand or the other exclusively and only. You should be more of a multi-platform owner. And I know money's tight and there's that whole argument of being, you know, I can only afford one brand, but you make it sound like this is the last game console you're ever going to buy, when in all actuality, you could buy an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Nintendo 1 year, and a year, 2 years, 3 years later, buy a different console, and then you become a multi-platform owner and you could go experience those titles. And that's what the joy of being a multi-platform owner is you get to play the titles that interest you on the brands that they appear on. And it's not that big of a deal. It's actually quite enjoyable having access to gaming in a much larger, broader perspective. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to just kind of leave off here and say I hope you enjoyed today's video and the content around it. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment down below. All that fun stuff that YouTube likes to see helps my channel grow. And please also check out the end card on this video. Please explore my channel, check out my latest video. And remember, this is where I also tell everybody that no matter what, the console war is dogma. So please just remember to play the titles that you want on the platforms that you prefer, no matter what anybody says. I am Centurion 1307, and thank you for watching.